can't really get your man to open up, I want you to know something. A man's only going to open up on average about 30% around a woman. For a man to truly open up and express that deep trauma, he needs to be around other men who can hold that masculine space for him to go into that feminine place of healing.
One of the most masculine things you can do is to be in truth. You're on a date with a woman, be in truth. You feel a certain way, be in truth. Just go, I'm feeling this in my body right now. This is what you are triggering in my body. I wonder what's happening in yours.
In today's episode of Heal Thyself, I spoke with Adeyemi, and he's an expert in men's health and transcendence of deep repressed trauma that we hold. Adeyemi has 11 years dedicated to exploring spirituality, quantum physics, and energy. In this episode, Adeyemi teaches us how to unlock our full potential and how to create the lives that we envision into a reality. Good, man. I love what you've been saying. I mean, like, you know, I see your passion about like men ascending to higher consciousness, being better men in this world, man, better leaders, better everything. We need it. It's crazy. We need it more than ever now, you know? It's pretty crazy. So I really appreciate that work that you're doing, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying that, because I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But man, working with men it's a difficult one, I have to say.
And what's the reason working with men is so difficult where we are right now in our consciousness overall?
It depends on the kind of man you want to work with. I see the bigger problem actually being that man who's on the edge of the traditional way of operating, the traditional level of masculinity, and trying to make the jump into wholehearted living. That man is typically stuck in his business. That man has been running his mental games for so long. So when someone like myself comes in to work with him and to encourage him on the journey ahead, what you're really meeting is a very refined mental construct. So when you're working with people who have already started down the spiritual path, it's a little bit easier. But the problem is most people and most of the men on the spiritual path, they're not as successful, as influential, as impactful as the men who are not on the spiritual path. So what you really want to do is to get the men who are impactful, influential, still on that money success line and get them onto the spiritual path so they can transform their lives and go ahead and transform the rest of the world. The problem is their mind, right? And most of these men are used to knowing everything, being the be all end all, and just having full control. And when they fundamentally start to go on a journey that confronts their ego, man, you really see a man that creates mechanisms and machinations from his mind to stop him from going down that journey. And underlying it is fear, but they're so good at masking it. So you end up fighting with this mental defense layer and really fighting with that for weeks, months before he goes on the journey and has enough trust to go on the journey. Because ultimately what he's looking for is trust. So when I say difficult for men, it's really the kind of men and where they are on their spectrum. And what I find is the ones who are really embedded in corporate culture, it's extremely difficult to get them through, even though they're desperately crying for this. Desperately. I mean, marriages are failing, businesses are failing, or businesses are not going well, their health is in decline, yet there is just this addiction because it's all they've known for sometimes 20 years. So it's an interesting one working with men, I have to say.
This brings up something, because all of these men who are successful in business but have their marriage falling apart, and maybe now their business is falling apart, their health is falling apart, they were all young boys who were free and happy and living with consciousness flowing through them, life, having an experience so present. What happened, because you said fear is underlying it, what happened that so many men are now adult age but really have so much fear on the inside? What happens in our life that changes that experience?
The same energy that makes a person a billionaire is the same energy that makes a man homeless. Right? It's just a response to the same thing. And when you look at the people who are successful, 80% of them went through trauma or adversity in some way. So really what happened is that trauma getting buried in a person, right? Really what happened is that person going through life and never being seen and deciding to respond to trauma, typically from the perspective of they're going to prove, and one day they're going to be better than. And then over time, like a callus, they just build on that wound and build on that wound. And all of a sudden it becomes all they know. Sometimes the biggest fear is actually not what happened, is the fact that they don't know what's on the other side of dropping their mechanism of operating. right? So sometimes that alone just keeps them in that position where it's less so they've gone through trauma. Most of them have. I went through stuff. I'm sure you did.
Hmm.
Everybody does. But when you operate with that mechanism all your life, and then you turn that into what I call the fuel source, and you use that adversity-based fuel source because it's a response to trauma, and that gives you your charge for being successful in life. At some point, your whole identity is built on that decision that you're going to prove something else to the world. Being able and being brave enough to step outside of that, to discover a new way of working, a new way of operating with the world, is fundamentally challenging because what you're really doing is transcending your ego.
Hmm.
So it's that repetitive nature of using the same fuel source and the same response over and over. And it's less so, in my opinion, what happens across their life. It's mostly the repetitive nature of that and not knowing what's on the other side of dropping that.
Hmm. And you know, these men are so comfortable in the world that they've created because in so many ways it's served them, at least from a survival mechanism, and they've become this identity that has served them. So you're saying basically when we step out of that world, we're transcending the ego because it takes a lot of bravery to leave who you thought you were in the past and to step into a new sense of self. It takes a lot of courage and bravery in a man. But you said something that really stuck with me is the same energy that it takes to become a billionaire is the same energy that it takes to become homeless. We got the billionaire side, but what about the homeless side? What happens with, how is that energy the same?
It's the same source, right? So the same trauma that causes someone to go, you know what, screw this, I'm going to fight, I'm going to prove, I'm going to get into this anger state is the same heaviness and there's the same weight that a homeless person or someone who doesn't have the energy to respond in that way goes, I feel so much shame from this, and the shame is so crushing, I'm just going to let it crush me. And I'd have no more will to fight or to transcend this.
Hmm.
Whereas another person goes, I feel so much shame. I never want to feel this way again. The other one says, I feel so much shame. I don't know if there's any other feeling I can feel. So they run into things like the drugs or ways to escape, and they're running away from that feeling.
Hmm.
Another one is running away with a different perspective. And if you see this, you know, I really don't see a difference between anybody in this life. It's really how you respond to it. And I think there's a better way to respond to it, like the billionaire responds to it, goes make money. But oftentimes you meet these people and they're empty. They're completely empty on the inside. They're riddled with fear, riddled with emptiness. They're sensation seeking left and right. And it's a very similar energy to that person, right? In fact, sometimes you see someone who sold a company for $500 million. As soon as they remove the anchor that they have of how they were showing up in the world and what they were doing for work, and now they've sold that business, that same hole creeps up. And oftentimes you see those people go back into drugs, right?
Hmm.
So it's a very, very close energy, which is why if you look at this whole thing of founders who exited their companies or people who've achieved massive success, on the line, oftentimes they're on the titillating edge of some level of addiction or they're functioning addicts. And as soon as you remove one anchor, they crack.
Yeah.
That's because it's a very similar energy that you're working on. And ideally, what I look at here is, and the question I ask myself, the question I ask the men, is there a way to tap into a very different kind of energy, right? Which is obviously similar to some of the stuff that you do. Can we look at ourselves and live a life where we're not trying to mask any hole? Can we just live a life without any masks at all? So that's how I see the energy working.
Hmm.
And I see this with several different men. And it's interesting because the energy dances, the energy changes. You, especially when they're able to use that fuel source to drive success, that's where you have that mental paradigm that starts to run. And that inherently is just safety. But ultimately, it's running away from shame. So running away from shame causes the addict. Running away from shame also in many ways leads to the billionaires that we see out there.
And these moments of running away from shame happen when we're younger, and it could be simple as something you were so free and expressive and you were shut down feeling shame, and or can it just be one incident? Can it be, does it have to be a multitude of incidents? I'm just trying to understand, what is that inciting factor that contracts us so much in shame that we either respond with so much energy, I'm going to prove that I am not bad or shameful, or I am shameful, I'm going to go into drugs. Is it a series of traumas, or can it just be something that happens you know, we're going to be parents one day and we can't be overlooking our children. Like maybe our
Yeah.
gym teacher says, hey, you're so unathletic, you're the worst one in the class. And then that shame contracts them. Are they now set to go into a path of shame and that energy of homelessness or compensating and just, you know, overworking?
I really think it's a combination of both. And I would use myself to speak to this on some of the shame I went through. One of the ones I remember was as little as me going to tell my mother I was learning a new language and her getting tired of hearing me say I'm going to learn or do something new, that it completely shut down my ability to test and try new things. Right. And I went the complete opposite. I'm a super creative person, but I found myself excelling in math class and never exploring arts or languages simply because of that moment. And I never did for years. Right. So that became an area of me where I went, I can't do this. I can't do anything artistic. I'm completely useless at art. And I just never developed that skill. So that's one singular moment. But also in my life, you know, I had a series of different infractions with my father, different conversations where it might be someone who just challenges you so much that you just lose your voice to speak. And it takes a lot of power to fight against that. But again, everybody responds differently. I can't really go into the strength of a soul to be able to push through certain things. Some souls come here and they have to go have that experience of really getting to the bottom of life. That's part of the spectrum of existence, right? So the way I see it on a soul level, there is no good or bad. It's just an experience. So some souls come and have that, and other souls come and their goal is to experience what it means to push through and overcome. Generally, though, when a child is going through several different, and there are different stages, there's a brilliant book on this called Homecoming by John Bradshaw, one of my favorite books on anything trauma and how the child develops. There's several different stages and several different things that can get programmed into a child. However, when you have these moments where a child goes through some level of trauma or some shame gets incited, the child makes a decision. You start making decisions about life. And over time, what happens is those decisions, because they happen when you're typically in the alpha state of being a child and you're usually young, that decision starts to spiral, and the locus of control of that decision spirals into all other areas of your life over time to compensate for that little decision, right? And that could be anything like, hey, shut up, you're not meant to speak right now. And the child goes, my voice is not good enough. And you start having those deep patterns that run in your life. And, you know, when I've done inner child regressions, or when I regress my clients into inner child processes, the little things that come out as infinitesimal moments, right? Where you just start to see the little places of programming. The beauty, though, is when you start doing the work and going back into them and seeing those moments, all of a sudden you're able to really have empathy for yourself, because you start to see the micro moments where things were programmed. And your job now is to go back and go, this decision I'm making, this fear I'm feeling, this shame, this guilt, is it a conscious decision, or is it something that's running out of its locus of control? Mm-hmm. And if it's out of its locus of control, then maybe we should walk that back and go deal with that instead. So it's a bit of a conundrum in terms of how it works, but also you have spike moments. In my life, I've had spike moments of things that have happened to me that significantly marked shame in my body, right? And I keep coming back to process those things from many different angles, whether it's relationships, to sex, to business, to money. It's a constant thing at the same fundamental problem. So if I really look at it, it's almost like a soul comes here and has its macro contracts and its micro contracts.
This is what you think about. You know, I'm not a parent yet, but there's a lot of parents listening. They're going, okay, well, we do the best we can as parents, and then, you know, we may say these things that we don't know are completely going to shift the perspective of the child's sense of self and decision making, and completely change the trajectory of where that child was going, living in a more contracted state. As you know, I'm always emphasizing the importance of staying hydrated, but here's the thing, it's not just about drinking water, it is about drinking clean water. Did you know that according to research conducted by the Environmental Working Group, 3 out of 4 homes in America have harmful contaminants in their tap water? That's pretty alarming, especially when you consider that 60% of our bodies are made up of water. And this is where AquaTrue comes in. I've been using this water purifier for a while now. We're talking about like 4 years. And let me tell you, it's been the game changer of my life. I just did a vacation getaway and I brought my AquaTrue with me to make sure that everyone on the vacation is getting clean water. It's a countertop purifier. It has a 4-stage reverse osmosis process. It removes 15 times more contaminants than any other ordinary pitcher. And the best part, there's no installation or plumbing required. What really impressed me about AquaTrue is it's certified to remove PFAS. These are the polyfluorinated forever chemicals that are found in 45% of tap water that stay in your body for years on end. And as a doctor, I cannot stress enough how important it is to avoid long-term exposure of these chemicals. It's not just about removing the bad stuff too. The water tastes fantastic. I've noticed I drink more water throughout the day. Filters are affordable, they're long lasting. We're talking about 6 months to 2 years before you need to change them. They're long, it's crazy. Like you don't have to, I've had filters in water pitchers where I had to change filters every 2 months, 3 months. It's a lot less hassle and waste compared to those pitchers that you have to change often. So if you're looking to make a positive change for your health, start with water, and it's a great first step. My first ever post on Instagram was about water. So right now, AquaTrue is offering you, the Heal Thyself listener, a special deal. You can get 20% off of the AquaTrue Purifier by going to aquatrue.com. That is AQUATRU.com and enter the code DRG at checkout. Remember, that's aquatrue.com and the code is DRG and you're going to get 20% off. You know, we talk a lot about health on this show, and today I want to chat about something that we often overlook. It is our sleep environment, specifically our mattresses. I'm going to tell you right now the best bed in the industry when it comes to non-toxic, clean, comfortable, top of the top is a Birch mattress. I've worked with them for so long because I believe in them so much. Birch mattresses are crafted with organic cotton, organic wool, and 100% natural latex. Why does it matter? Well, many conventional mattresses use many different chemicals, especially polyurethane foams, and they release harmful emissions into the air. What really caught my attention is Birch mattresses are completely free of fiberglass. You may not realize it, but many companies out there, conventional ones, are using fiberglass as flame retardants. And Birch, on the other hand, uses organic wool, which is naturally flame resistant. And with Birch, I can rest easy knowing I'm not exposed to those unnecessary chemicals or pollutants. Plus, the organic wool helps regulate your body temperature so you're not heating up in the bed. Like a lot of you are human radiators and torches in the bed, this one is perfect, especially in those warmer months. So I've been sleeping on my Birch mattress for a long time. It's been about 3-4 years. I've noticed significant improvements in my sleep. I fall asleep quicker. I wake up feeling refreshed. The bed is cool. I'm always excited to get into bed. I know that choosing a mattress can be a big decision. I'm going to highly recommend the Birch mattress, which actually offers a 100-night sleep trial. They're so confident that you're going to love it. They're going to give you more than 3 months to try it out. And if that's not enough, it comes with a 25-year warranty. So I encourage you to check out Birch. And right now they're having a Labor Day sale, which makes it a perfect time to upgrade your sleep. You can get 25% off of any Birch mattress plus 2 free EcoRest pillows. Go to birchliving.com/heal thyself. That is birchliving.com/heal thyself, HEALTHYSELF, to get 25% off of your Birch mattress plus 2 free EcoRest pillows. Is there any resources you've read or anything that you've come across where it can empower some parents that are listening going, okay, whoa, like I know I can't micromanage all my words, but what are the best things I can do to raise those kids to be in a free place?
I really think every parent should read the book Homecoming by John Bradshaw, especially every parent of a man, right? One of the beautiful things that John Bradshaw talks about is how men need men in the healing process, right? And this is very similar to the works of David Deida, more from a sexual angle, where women can heal around women and men. Men typically need men. In other words, boys need their fathers. So for me, especially the men, I would suggest you read that. And typically you want to go on this process of childhood deconditioning. There are a few different options for this. I like the one I went to was something called primal childhood deconditioning. And here what you're really doing is you're removing the 90% of programmings that came from your mother and your father and your reactions to your mother and your father. And as a result of that, you're getting back in touch with your inner child and going from the wounded inner child to the magic inner child, because the inner child is your full force of creativity, is your full force of empathy. And if you're out of touch with your own inner child, you're going to be out of touch with your child. I've been around parents who they start doing this work, and as soon as they touch into their inner child, as soon as they start getting empathetic for their inner child, what happens is the way they interact with their children completely changes, especially for men. Because on this journey of, being a strong man, I'm a 6'3", 6'4" man, pretty heavy set, 210 pounds. I come with this thing of I am strong, I am big. When I hear the term inner child, it's like, inner child what? It sounds like some weak work to do. Until I help people understand that what you actually need to do is you need to reframe it as probably one of the most powerful things you can do for your creativity, because what you're doing is you're restoring your connection back to that source alpha state level of connection that you had between the ages of 1 and 5. And when I've gone into my inner child archetype, I literally download new ideas and new trajectories from my life that accelerate me forward. So this is your most creative part of your being. And when we hamper on why you should go get in touch with that, A, it connects you into your creativity. B, it gives you the sensitivity to understand from the other side the dish you're dishing out to your child, right? And by getting in touch with that, just the way you interact with your child completely changes. I like to tell people to move away from, yes, read all the books. There's certain things you just need to experience and be in yourself. There's certain processes that you need to be able to refill again and open your heart to your inner child. And that's how you speak to your child. The other thing that I think is super important here is let's give some parents some slack. It's really, really difficult to raise a child in this climate, in this world today. It's, I won't say difficult, it's really interesting. And I see parents around. I'm not a father myself, but I see parents around and I see how I was raised. And it's very different, right? I grew up in Africa where my parents had 3, 4 maids at a certain time. There was help to take care of us. Meant I didn't connect with my mother, father as much, but also as much as I didn't connect with them, there was still a lot of help. Anyway, the place I'm going to with this is we need to cut them some slack and understand that the child is discovering life as much as the parent is discovering the child. So if you go in with that lens of perfection, you're ultimately going to create chaos. Because whenever you try to create perfection out of the universe, you create some level of chaos. If you go in instead with the intent to discover the chaos of the awakening of this child in front of you, now you're in a process of discovery. You are naturally open to feedback. You are not holding yourself to a high standard. So you remove the very rigidity that propagates into trying to perfect the journey of the child. And instead, you are discovering this child just like this child is discovering life. Mm-hmm. That fundamentally changes the entire paradigm because you are not making this child. You are witnessing this child. And when you're trying to make the child into something it should be, that inherently is a trauma because you don't even know what's in this child. So you're forcing into the child. And this is one huge thing that I see when I work with people who have kids and we go through this and we go into the deep stuff. As soon as they start to get this point and they switch to discovery, something else changes because they can perpetually augment how they show up because now they no longer have a goal they're trying to get to. All they're doing is really witnessing empathetically what this child needs in this moment. And of course, you are going to program trauma into the child. That is part of the thing the child needs to awaken in this life. When I went through some of my spiritual processes, I was able to reconfront trauma and traumatic experiences. And for the first time, understand why I needed to experience that to become who I am. If someone took that away from me, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. So how can we get thankful and how can we honor this process? Yes, we want to limit it, but I also understand that this is a tool for a soul's awakening.
Now, are you ready to elevate your coffee game and experience a brew that is not only delicious, but also health focused? I'm going to introduce you to one of my favorites. It's Purity Coffee. It's the ultimate choice for coffee lovers who prioritize both taste and well-being. Let's chat about what makes Purity Coffee stand out from the rest. Every step in the process is rooted in a health-focused principle. It's backed by solid scientific research and rigorous testing. They start by sourcing the finest specialty-grade organic Arabica beans, and they move on to small batch roasting, ensuring each cup meets the highest standards of quality. But what really sets Purity Coffee apart is their dedication to purity and safety. Their beans undergo third-party testing and they ensure that it's free of all those pesticides, toxins, harmful mycotoxins, those pesky substances that wreak havoc on your health, that causes issues in your liver or your kidney or digestive issues. brain fog, fatigue. A lot of us drink coffee. A lot of us love coffee. And Purity Coffee has some of the highest antioxidant capacity that you're going to find out there. That's why you want to drink coffee. You want high quality antioxidant rich coffee. Most coffee is going to have that. Most coffee is not going to be pure as Purity. Now, it gives you a powerful dose of health boosting compounds with every single sip that you take. Now, it's not just about what's in the cup though. It's about how it's produced. Purity Coffee is grown on regenerative organic farms that prioritize soil health, animal welfare, and community well-being. It's got certifications from the USDA Organic, Rainforest Alliance, Smithsonian Bird Friendly. You can trust Purity Coffee is not only good for you, but of course good for the planet. We're connected to the planet. Why wouldn't we want to show up the best that we can? They have a range of roasts from their light medium roast with sweet fruity notes to their dark roast, which has rich, bold taste. And for those of you looking for the caffeine without sacrificing the taste, the Calm Decaf Medium Roast is the answer. That one's a delicious one. A lot of my friends love it. And it's made from naturally decaffeinated Swiss water beans. And it's the best tasting organic decaf on the market. If you are ready to experience the pure pleasure of Purity Coffee, visit puritycoffee.com and use the code DRG for 30% off of your first purchase. That is PURITYCOFFEE.com and use the code DRG for 30% off. Every parent just who heard that could take a deep breath, right? Because, I know people who are parents in my life, and I know that one day when I become a parent, we have all of these goals. We want our child to grow up healthy and strong and free and wise and protected. And life happens. And what you're saying is leaning into less rigidity and more being in curiosity and discovery of how your child is unraveling, unfolding, and being present with them in those moments, rather than just having one goal and being like, well, this moment doesn't equate that goal, therefore something is wrong, but being with them in the ups and the downs and the lefts and the rights. It kind of gives us more freedom. It ebbs and flows because we're human beings, right? Like we ebb and flow. And then how much freedom it gives parents out there to know that, hey, your child will be on some level traumatized by something. It doesn't have to be a big T trauma, but it can be something that you say. But you're saying it's so purposeful because it creates the soul experience of why we're here and what we're here to experience. So, all the parents could take a nice deep breath because we took a load off the shoulder. I ain't even a parent right now and I got a load off my shoulder. So thank you for giving us that beautiful relief, man. And what was the book again, as a reminder, so that parents out there can get it?
Here.
Oh, you got it right in arm's length.
John Bradshaw, Homecoming.
Okay, I gotta get this one.
I guess I'm gonna be a proponent of this man's book. I've recommended it. It's pretty beautiful the way he goes through his things, and I've formed a foundation for a lot of inner child deconditioning retreats and processes.
You said men need men in healing, right? And I've had an inkling that this is very true because I see the power of how men open up in retreats with men, brotherhood, whatever it is. But what's the reason? Is it because that most men then out there, we can infer that they have a father wound that needs to be healed through masculine energy? What is the special interaction between men around men that creates that really powerful healing versus other instances?
Christian, the thing that I really see, right, it's this inherent thing of safety and where a person, a soul can heal. I see that the soul heals predominantly in the feminine. When a woman can be around other women who will tap into their masculine energy to a certain degree, and they can hold enough masculine space for that woman to drop deeper in her feminine and heal, and she's in her feminine anyway, so there is this connection and bonding that can happen, and she feels safe enough to go through her process. If she's with the right man, he's naturally in that zone and he can provide that safety for her to open up into the depth of healing. When you have men who are highly masculine, who are tapped in, and they're naturally more highly masculine than women in terms of energy, they need to be around other men so that they can outsource their masculinity, so they can outsource their safety for a set period of time for them to drop into the extremely vulnerable, unsafe, feminine space for a man. And when he drops in there, he needs to make sure that the men can hold him in that zone because he's outsourcing. So existentially, he can't really get into the very deep states of the parasympathetic until he knows everything is taken care of. My wife, my kids are safe. The place I'm in is safe. There's healthcare, whatever. If I need to go in there, everything is monitored. And I have these men around me who are at my level or better. When he goes into that healing journey and he comes out of it, he also needs to reclaim his masculine on the other side. Because one of the worst things that can happen to a man is for him to get into that feminine space and not be able to reclaim his masculine outside when he steps out, because the men don't give it back to him. So there is this non-judgmental space where we need to witness each other and hold space and say, hey, go in, completely break down. And because I'm strong enough and you know we're at about a similar level, this is why there are different levels of this work. And when you're really with super dominant men, they need to be around other super dominant men for them to heal. It's critical. And as soon as they step into their feminine and they come out of it and they're going on the other side, it's super important to reaffirm and help them reestablish their masculine identity. In fact, make them never feel like they left that masculine identity in the first place, so that they can go on their journey and go back into propagating and proliferating in the world. So that energy for me is what I found to be, I don't know if you want to call it a secret sauce. Mm-hmm. There's just something about that thing of, man, I got you right now. Like, I am holding this space for you and I'm not judging anything that comes out of your mouth. I'm not judging, especially when we start getting into sexual shame and the really deep aspect of that. It's really, man, I'm not judging anything. You can go any direction you want to go in, and that's totally fine. And when you walk out of here, I still respect you. There's something about that.
That runs very deep, because when we think about our own biological impulse as men is to show up in this protective state, you know, like the wife is fine, the kids are fine, the house is fine, everything's protected. So much so that we hold our own masculinity, and with the things we care about or the people we care about around us, it's kind of hard to drop into that ourselves. So from what I'm understanding then is, in relationship, let's say a heterosexual relationship, is it difficult then for a man to fall into that feminine vulnerability with a wife or a girlfriend, as much more difficult as it would be to be at a retreat with other men of the same masculine charge or holding the same masculine energy as that particular man?
Brother, extremely. You know, a lot of women want their man to be vulnerable. A lot of women really crave that. But I also see time and time again that when men start to step into a certain depth of vulnerability, it's like women have a vulnerability meter with their men. They want them to be vulnerable, but just 10, 15% more vulnerable than they currently are. When that man is going into 60% vulnerability, she's looking at him as weak and she's starting to question her safety. Unless she's at a really advanced level on her own journey. And oftentimes when a couple is starting to get into the really advanced level of polarity and energy work, now they're playing into the tantric space. Now they're exploring polarity, dominant, sub dynamics and polarity. So they start to have this safety and the ability to sense role switching. 90% of the people, I would say, let's say 80%, let's be generous. Oftentimes what I find is the men are asked to be vulnerable. As soon as they get in there, they get chastised by the women, right? And there's this, I've seen this live, like I've literally watched this live where someone cried and begged for someone to be vulnerable for years. The day the man did it, the woman switched on him. Right? So I'm not saying it's a trap. It's a call for vulnerability, yes. And you might have a woman that allows you to go really deep. If you do, amazing. Love, cherish her. And even if you don't, love and cherish your woman. But this thing of having a brotherhood where you can just go, brother, this is what's happening. I think I was watching something on Instagram. I forget the man. I think it was Adam something. And he talked about how if he just so much as told his woman, let's save a little bit of money, she thinks they're going completely broke. And it's just, we're just planning. We're just doing something else. We're moving money in a different way. Whereas you can be around your men and go, this is how my whole life is about to crash. And this is the best parts of my life. And they hold you through that. And they don't lose that energetic sense of safety. And a lot of times this is not about, it's primal. It's a natural thing. It's tough for the woman to control it. She sees a man looking super weak, going through vulnerability. And if you really start asking this, sometimes you might fall into depression for a few days. All of a sudden it's, whoa, what's going on with my life? What's the safety? It's natural. It's really natural. Does that mean don't be vulnerable with your woman? No. Be vulnerable. Spend time. open it up. I love Brené Brown's book on this. Spend time going into the deep things, but still there's only a level that you can get to with men that you can access it deeper. There's something you can access deeper. I think you know this also.
Yeah, no, but you're articulating it in a way that makes it very real, especially I'm sure for the men listening. How many of us have been in a relationship and the partner goes, "I want you to be more vulnerable. Why don't you open your heart up more?" And I remember seeing on Instagram, I don't know how I came across it, but it was a church pastor talking about
Yeah.
how if a man opens up and he finally fully shows or tries to open up, if you chastise him or ridicule him or use that against him, that'll be the last time he's going to open up in the
Absolutely.
relationship.
Absolutely.
And it makes me feel like, part of me makes me feel a lot of compassion for men, because where do we go then? You know, if we can't all just go on a men's retreat, are most men carrying so much then that because they're not fully opening up, or no one's holding them in a space where they can actually process all the stuff that they've been holding in for 20, 30, 40 years? Are we as men holding in so much trauma that we don't have the resources or places to go? Because I'm hearing that we need other men, but not all men have other men. Not all men can go to a men's retreat. So what do we as men do? We have nothing to do. If a woman can't hold us 15, 20%, maybe even more if they're into the tantra work, like you said, where do we go as men to express that heaviness that we're holding?
You know, I'm really trying to solve this right now. And for me, it's really going to start with the narrative of what it means to be truly masculine. It's really that narrative of vulnerability being equal to weakness. And that's the narrative that's perpetuating the sack that most men carry on their back. Now, if you look at the rates of people who go to therapy, 80% are women, 20% are men. It's not because there's a lack of therapists, it's because there's a lack of trust and the safety for a man to go into that deep space. And also, there's a narrative preventing that, right? If you even look at the path of transformation, when I host a retreat and it's women, you know what happens? The women come in and immediately they're ready to go into the deep process of,
Yeah.
let's just cry and let's throw it all out there and let's just, oh my God, I need to let this go. And then they do that for 2 days. And the next 2 days in the retreat, let's dance, let's party, let's have fun. Men, on the other hand, they start with this playfulness of safety. Oh yeah, like let's grab a drink, let's go by the fire, let's have some burger. And then they do that for a little bit and then it opens up and it's like, oh man. And it's a completely different path. So to go back to your question, I think it's really interesting to look at the path of how a person heals. One goes through play, the other, and then healing, and then back into play. The other one comes straight in and then goes into play. But if you think about this load that men are carrying, yes, a lot of men are carrying a lot of load, point blank, full stop. Most of the time, they don't even know or they can't access it because of the mental construct and the mental defense mechanisms that they've put around themselves. For example, dissociating, that they've put, there's so many of them, there's a myriad, that they've put around the core pain or the core wound. And what happens is you have the person's core, around it is pain, just pure pain. And around that pain is the mental defense mechanisms. So to get to your core being, the inner child, the process, the full download and the full authenticity of yourself, you have to go past the defense mechanisms, into the pain, feel that, and then go into the core wound. You need that space of play first and a very different process for a man to do it. So most people are carrying load, men and women. I don't even want to separate this necessarily. I also find that women tend to bond together. Men tend to ascribe to this identity of I'm a soul, I'm a lone wolf. I can do this on my own. And it takes time to re-educate yourself to go, I struggle with this, right? There's so many times where my defense mechanism kicks and it's like, right, watch me do this whole thing on my own. And I have to slow down and remind myself, hey, you can't do that. You're here to intermingle with others. So the weight is there. The access path, I don't necessarily think is through therapy. I think people need actual friendships that call them out on their BS. And to get that kind of friendship, you need to first of all start being that kind of friend. And you need to start facing your own self, facing your own BS, and living a life where you can look yourself in the mirror and go, man, this is BS. Like this construct of how I need to work and make money and how I show up and how I treat people and this ego, you need to look at yourself and go, this is freaking ego. Mm. And from that point, start asking yourself, what is the authentic version? And it's tough because Now you have to peel off ways of working and ways of showing up in the world. But that's the work. I promise you one thing. You start doing that, and all of a sudden you start seeing that the friends you keep are going to be on a similar wavelength, and the friends who drop off are not. They're probably not ready to go on the journey you want to go. So if you're not ready to go to a retreat or therapist, you really need to start owning your true frequency, looking in the mirror. That's going to change how you attract people in your life. And you get to a point where you realize you're surrounded by 4, 5, 6 people on a similar wavelength. And then this mechanism starts to form where everybody calls themselves out in the BS. Mm. And when you're in that space, for the first time you show up, I just had it in Switzerland, actually. For the first time you show up in these locations and your guard is completely down. And it's just a mechanism that self-corrects itself, because your brother will look at you and go, I don't know, you seem kind of fake on that one. And then there's a challenge process, because part of the process of healing and transformation for man is you need to be challenged, which is why it's also challenging to hold space for men, because they will challenge you with the same mental construct that's freaking good. So you have someone who's a Harvard PhD who's raised $4 billion or built a $4 billion business in front of you, and you're telling him to heal, you're going to go back and forth for a little bit, and you have to withstand that. Before we get ahead of ourselves, it's really that. It's trauma's there, the weight is there. There are many options, but I would say start with a brotherhood and start by being able to look yourself in the mirror and go, you know what, today I showed up as 100% myself. And wherever I was fake, I recognized it, I noticed it, and I showed up.
And that awareness will change your ultimate frequency of what you're drawing in. Like you said, you start attracting people who are on that alignment, creating even people who are out there and go, okay, listen, I don't have many guy friends. This is something that I want to cultivate. This is the way that I do it. It's really showing up in as authentic as you can, calling out your own BS, and then calling in people who are ready for that too.
I need to add something here. I think one of the most masculine things you can do is really be in truth. One of the most masculine things you can do is to be in truth. You're on a date with a woman, be in truth. You feel a certain way, be in truth. Like if you want to connect with the person in front of you or the woman in front of you, for example, instead of coming up with different strategies and ways you're going to play around and try to make her like you, just go, I'm feeling this in my body right now. This is what you are triggering in my body. I wonder what's happening in yours. Truth. It's so powerful. But when that frequency starts to come in, you start to see the men typically start to engineer their life around that truth to hide it or cover it in some way. Step in with that and lead with that. What I tell people most of the time is, you know, the quickest way to change your life is to walk into any room. Is that any room you walk into, instead of telling them your story and the edited version of you, just lead with the thing you're scared of sharing the most. Just share that and see what happens. You'll very quickly polarize your people. The ones who don't like you will go to the side. The ones who do immediately will come around you. The energy around you will start to change. Your vibration rate will start to change. And the way you move through the field will completely change.
Leading with that thing that is your biggest fear, the thing that is the truth for you, you're saying. Okay.
Yes.
All right. That's a challenge for everyone viewing and listening.
Oh,
it's a tough one.
Tough.
To lead with that.
I literally give this to venture capitalists and CEOs and different people.
Yeah.
They go, but I can't do it in this room and that room. I'm like, well, why do you think you need to lie in a room and try to make money in that room still and try to be inauthentic in that room? What happens if you show up as your full self?
Yeah. I want to shift the gear on to something that I really appreciate in your work that you talk about is quantum, the quantum world. And every time we hear that word, I mean, we're out here in LA, people use like quantum healing and quantum this and quantum expertise. And it sort of becomes very abstract, which inherently it is abstract, even scientifically. But how do we contain this to an understanding of like, what is the significance of quantum when it comes to our own healing? What role does it play? What does quantum even mean in our own healing? Because I know that you're passionate about it and I am too, but I really want to hear it in your words into how that role plays in.
You know, I spent a lot of time like going into the quantum, and in fact, one of my partners says this all the time is like, if you just want to make something sound more sexy, throw the word quantum in front of it.
That's right.
Or if you don't really understand something, throw the word quantum in front of it. Yes, we can look at the quantum field as, I look at it as just the general landscape of energy and potentials around us and our ability to shift through different potentials. If we want to talk about this as healing, I see the quantum field really, or the whole quantum discussion, really as an emotional states discussion. I found that when I really want to do quantum jumping work, when I want to change my entire frequency in my life, when I want to make a quantum leap into a very high state of wealth or whatever it is, ultimately what I need to do is spend time not only on the mental construct, but on the emotional and my nervous system capacity and almost the vibration rate of my nervous system and whether or not that matches the amount I want to get to. If I say to someone, you had a billionaire in front of you, you had to ask for $2 million, can you go in there and ask for $2 million and really hold that frequency of the $2 million? Or is your nervous system going to get all anxious and get completely out of whack? If that's happening, you need to calibrate your nervous system to that level of worthiness of those $2 million with that billionaire where you're completely unshifted and you just know this is your worth and this is your value. This is where you calibrate at. Now, to get to that state, there is a mental construct of the skills, the things you're going to show up with. Are you actually able to hold that in the physical sphere? That's one. There is the physical capacity where I always say, go through a body de-armoring process and do things like EFT where you're tapping meridian points to release energy from your body so that you can go from anxiety into a really low, calm, parasympathetic state, because that's connected to your I amness, right? That's how you really get into the state of infinite possibility. But then when you've done the mental and the physical, there's also need for that emotional work, because inherently that is the core driver of this thing. I had made a video about this. It blew up actually, because I said to jump quantum states, you need to jump in emotional states. Whether it's plant medicine work I've done or deep inner childhood healing or sexual deconditioning processes, ultimately what I'm removing is the ripple effect of whatever I went through that made me feel unworthy, and those decisions from my physical body, from my emotional body, and then my mental thinking. And the more of that I can remove, the more it can become a no-brainer for me to be at a higher quantum state. And that for me is that piece that a lot of people miss. It's not just sitting there and doing a quantum jump in meditation, sure.
Yeah.
What emotional state do you have to be at? What is that billionaire's, let's just use money because it's an easy mark, right? What is that billionaire's emotional state? Or for a man, the man who closes more women, what is his emotional state when he's with a woman? What is that calm, cool, collected zone, no matter how pretty the woman is? Can you start getting into that? So fundamentally for me, that's the game changer.
So we hear about this to even understand clear. We hear about this quantum state as a realm of possibilities that is all accessible to all of us based on a few things. We can jump quantumly, to summarize what you said, based on our physical state, our mental state, and our emotional state, with the emotional playing a major role. So for us to get, and we're talking about money and abundance, and for people listening and viewing, they go, you know what, like, I feel my worth is more. I'm not making as much money as I want to. I want to bring in more abundance. You're saying that the emotional state is that state of what does it feel like? So it's actually having that own somatic experience of what it feels like to receive X amount of dollars in your paycheck. Is that what you're saying? Like, we have to get ourselves into that frequency?
I think that's more manifesting of, let's get into that frequency of, I am not removed from this amount.
Yeah.
What I'm more speaking about is when the opportunity presents itself, can your emotional capacity actually meet the demand of that particular moment? And this is connected to the nervous system. Can you maintain your I amness where you're unflinching? You know this, that same feeling you had, your nervous system can actually operate at that level, not in a make-believe way, but more in there's a $300,000 deal on the table with this client. I know I'm worth $300,000. And when I ask and say my price is $300,000, after thinking about it in a logical manner so it makes sense, and I make that pitch to the client, do I feel perturbed in my system, or am I able to just maintain, yes, this is the value. This is calm. It's like waking up in the morning and sipping a coffee and going, yep, it's $2. Great. Here you go. It's a transaction. So the question is, can you take that nervous system state and that nervous system activation level you feel when you're buying a $3 coffee and feel the same way when you're asking for a $3 million check? That is that level of, it's just an equal. I'm flat. I'm non-reactive here. That's what I mean by nervous system capacity. And if you keep opening that and working on that, then you walk into a room and it's, yeah, that's me. Sure, let's go. Why is this important? Inherently, we can feel the nervous state of the other people around us. When someone who's nervous walks into the room, what happens? You look at them and you go, I don't know, something about her. She's all over the place. She's jittery.
Yeah.
Something is happening.
Yeah.
So you can feel the nervous system on a very subliminal level. Your clients can feel the same thing. So if you're inauthentic and you're not able to really calibrate at that level, that other person is going to feel that. That is going to reduce your likelihood on a subconscious level of you being able to actually get the thing that you want.
Hmm.
So yes, do the quantum jump in meditation, but also really, really open your capacity to ask and to be flat, emotionally flat when you're going for the bigger things. That's a huge, huge game changer.
Training our nervous system to be in that parasympathetic state of you're safe to ask for $2 million as you are safe to buy a $2 cup of coffee. It's the same movement or balance in the nervous system, the same charge. And you're saying we can work on that. I guess from my side, it's like, that's when I start thinking about the emotional repression, the things that we're holding in. If we have unexpressed anger, that unexpressed anger is inherently going to be an anchor to that charge of that balance. It's going to be holding, it's going to be causing us to be in that sympathetic state, even for the $2 coffee. So that really brings in that conversation of, we really need to look at what we're holding in and clear that space so we have more capacity, would you say?
I think this is why your message is also quite important, right? Of this whole thing of how do you heal yourself?
Mm-hmm.
How do you combine fascia release with the right foods that put you in the right frequency,
right.
with the right emotional work that releases your body, with the right spiritual mechanisms? There's really a high intelligence to combining modalities of healing in this process, right? It's, yes, work on the anger, but also probably change your food because your gut health might be impacting that.
Right.
Like, literally think about that. Also change the people that you're around because they might be impacting you also on a frequency basis. And also do some body work. Like, with the work I design and the way I think about men's processes and the journeys, I spend hundreds of hours going through processes for a person to heal. And for me, it's physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. And the physical is not just the food you eat. It's also about, how do you unlock the old stored trauma patterns in your body that give you underlying tension, not only in your fascia, but actually just in your body muscles itself. If you start releasing that, what happens is your capacity for life force and even pleasure rises through your body. Because now even your kundalini or your sexual energy can run through your body even more, and you start opening up new nervous pathways. So if you open your capacity for pleasure, you open your capacity for higher emotional feelings. That's physical. Mental is the same thing. What's going on in your mind? We can do all the mental work we want, but if you're eating things that are causing you mental fog, you're going to stay stuck. Right? And same thing with emotional. And with emotional, actually, one of the best things for this is a relationship. What is your capacity for true intimacy? Can you really fall in love? Because if you can't really fall in love, then you're avoiding pain. So can you really feel the pain of existence? Because if you can feel the pain of existence, you can feel the pain, the joy of love. Now you're in the range. And spiritual is the source. What is this thing coming through? You start aligning all of that and you start making quantum jumps. Your whole life starts to change. And yes, back to your point, it's very, very connected to those emotions. You got to remove those emotions from your body. And one of the brilliance of doing this work is being able to wake up and go, I haven't been angry in 9 months. I don't remember when last I was angry. If you know anything about the consciousness scale, you're probably above 200, my friend. You know?
And that's a good thing, right? Like, I love that you just weaved in the integrative aspect of everything, right? Because it's what it is. It's even the food you're eating. Like, if you're not having the self-love to eat the foods that give your body the fuel and nourishment and energy to feed into your nervous system, to feed into your emotions, it all plays together. And finally, more doctors and more people in medicine are starting to bring awareness to this. We're years away, but people like you are already saying this clear cut. This is, you guys got to look at everything. And I really, really love that.
I think for me, I really like to think about, I'm a bit of a nerd, right? And I say that in the sense of I'm reading books about the emotions. I'm not satisfied with my emotional state. So I'm saying, how much more capacity can I have for life? What is this thing? Right? I am looking at food and I'm going, how can I be higher performance? What's the right thing for me? And I also love life. So I love the flavors. I love the taste. I'm not the person to reduce the quality of what I put in myself or surround myself by for some other end goal. Because the journey is the ultimate destination. The journey is the whole point of this thing.
Mhm.
And one of the things I like to think about is, what statement is this making? Everything you're doing is a statement. The drinks you're drinking is a statement. The food you're eating is a statement. The way you buy cheaper versus more expensive food for yourself is a statement. Everything is a statement being professed into the universe on how you view yourself, the people you surround yourself with, the women you sleep with. It's all a statement. So if you were to categorize your life and the statements you make on a day by day basis, what statement, what is the ultimate thing you are writing in your book of life? Is it that you're living based off of fear, based off of the past, based off of these emotions? Or is it that you're living based on belief, self love, deep care, and connection into yourself? It's two very different things. And you can easily make that decision. You see it super clearly if you think about it from that perspective. And this was honestly, man, a full game changer for me. It's even in the moment where someone's saying, hey, how do I quantum jump? Cool. How would someone who had $1 billion or $10 million in your bank account make a decision right now if they were in this position? What decision would they make? And then you realize very quickly that a lot of people were making $100,000, $10,000 decisions when they want to get to a very different frequency. The question is, how do you polarize yourself at that frequency and make your decisions from that frequency? Because everything you do is making a statement about your life and about
Mm,
you.
mm. That I mean, what a great practice right now, everyone viewing, listening, to take that. Like, how does your book of life look? What statements are you making with every single piece? The stories you tell yourself, how you get up in the morning, the decisions you make, the food you eat, like the people that you bring into your field. All of these things matter, right? And it's a great way to audit our life if we just look at what statements we're making, micro statements, and just overall statements of our days and our weeks. That's like such a clear way to audit our life. Before we do the tail end of this, I just, we spoke about a little bit about partnership, relationship, and there's a lot of people viewing, listening. They go, hey, I want to find myself a good partner. I want to find myself, I've been looking for the one. I have a lot of friends who are really calling in the one. What would be your advice to someone who's really ready to step into that? I want the long-term partner. I'm ready. How do we call that person in?
I think it's important to be aggressively patient, and aggressively patient in terms of what do you need to work on yourself. Do that aggressively, not with aggression, but aggressively with diligence. But also really have that patience with yourself, because what you're really navigating here when you're looking for the one, and I've navigated this, I can't say I found the one yet, had many amazing relationships, but it's a switch, right? We always have this thing where we want the universe to be a certain way, or we have a certain idea of love, but we're not patient enough to go through the people and the connections and the process, right, of refining exactly what it is we want.
Mm.
I'll tell you what has shifted my paradigm is to be very open in my heart with the experiences I'm having, and to polarize myself where I don't close my heart if something doesn't work out. I don't close if something isn't aligned. I don't close my heart if I'm hurt. Because what I realize is what the woman and what I really want to give to the woman who's going to come into my life is an infinitely deep capacity to open my heart into all of her. And the trials and tribulations that happen along the way with the different people I meet and the different people I connect with, most of the times they're teaching me how to keep this thing open and to stay really open in that. And then when I've worked with people and helped them find their own relationships, sometimes it happens faster because they're in that state where they're ready.
Mhm.
But it comes to this thing of the heart should be open. There's a trust element here, because the journey of finding your soulmate, it's this your journey of life. It's your journey of becoming more of yourself. Hope they're doing their journey. But this whole thing of I'm looking, I'm searching, and you get into this, it has to come now. what you're doing is you're reacting from inherent loneliness, and you're taking actions from inherent loneliness. So you're acting from a void to fill a void. It's a double thing, right? You're acting from a void to fill a void. You're creating more of a void. Instead, really try to, if you're in the void, stay in there, feel it fully, go deep into what that feels like in your body until the point where you no longer feel that void because you've gotten to the bottom of it. Great. Then allow whatever happens to allow. And honestly, when I've done this in my life, I've attracted amazing people, and it's all lessons. And when I've worked with other people on this, they end up just, people call me, it's like, hey, I found the love of my life. This has happened. This has completely changed, because they finally were just okay with the void. So for me, a big thing on manifesting and attracting, whether it's love, money, or whatever, it's just really being okay with where you are. And sometimes really saying, you know what, I don't have a goal anymore. I'm just going to drop everything. I'm going to surrender into life. I'm going to love the moment. I'm going to love the emptiness, and I'm going to feel that fully. And I'm not going to resist it. I'm going to feel the pain, because that pain you feel is the same love you're going to give.
All the viewers and listeners out there who want to find a partner, it's our responsibility to go, like you said, to that void, right to the bottom of the void, and be patient and not pushing from, I'm lonely, I want to find my partner, it's time, this is my age, all my friends, this, and no, being aggressively patient after you've been in that void with yourself, and allowing for things to unfold how they're supposed to. I always believe that, like, if you have an intention, things are already starting to move on some level. You know, intention always just moving that. Like, it just never happens. We align ourselves, but the intention gets it moving. And I think that's a big part of being, like, proclaiming, I'm ready to find that person who I want to be with all my life. And then doing that work to the void, like you said. You are a wealth of wisdom, man. We had another hour and a half, 2 hours of I have so many other questions for you, so we're gonna have to do another one. You know, and I
Thank you, brother.
Yeah, man. I don't always do the virtual ones, but I couldn't not talk to you even though you're across the pond. So hopefully next one we do is face to face somewhere, you know, and we really go deep, even deeper, man. But man, we learned so much.
I should be coming to America, by the way. So I'd love to do that.
That's it.
I should be coming to America very soon.
That's it. We're waiting on you, man. We're waiting on you over here. The time change. Let's hopefully you're awake and strong and not dozing off, man. Thank you so much for this wisdom, brother, man. Like, you've empowered us men. You empowered us who want a relationship. You've empowered parents. You know, like, this is what a real podcast is about. Thank you so much. I appreciate your work, man.
Thank you, brother. Very, very good to be here, and very good to be with your listenership. Thank you.